Alright guys, well, woke up to some pretty crazy news in the video game world in the UK today. Apparently Game, the biggest video game retailer in the country, high street retailer, is ending the second-hand market in their stores. Game will no longer be selling pre-owned video games in their stores. I'm kind of shocked, like, for a couple of reasons really, and it's not consumer friendly at all, is it? I mean, what is their motive for this? Do they think they're going to make more money by only selling new games at the higher prices? Do they think people are suddenly going to find extra disposable income because they're not selling the cheaper second-hand games? Like, no. People are still going to have the same amount of disposable income to spend on their hobbies, whether or not you're only selling the more expensive first-hand new games. Like, people are just going to end up either going somewhere else or waiting for deep sales more often, or buying less games. They're not going to suddenly have more money to spend on it just because there's no second-hand games there. It's absolutely crazy. You know, a lot of people rely on the second-hand market to be able to buy games because, you know, some of us aren't that rich. Or kids, you know, kids who have less of, certainly much less disposable income. You know, over the years, the demographic of who's playing video games has changed, and now, of course, it's, you know, older people, adults as well, obviously, who grew up with it, but certainly, obviously, still a lot of kids playing video games, but make up a huge percentage of the market. But yeah, a lot of people don't have huge amounts of money to spend, and they're not going to suddenly find extra money to spend just because Game have decided they're only going to sell new stuff. So it's kind of elitist, you know. They kind of, well, I'd say they're kind of punishing people for being poor, but those people are just going to go somewhere else. You know, they've basically handed the entire second-hand market to their biggest rival, CEX. So let's see if CEX now goes from strength to strength, now that it's going to basically monopolize the second-hand market. Of course, their entire business model is based on pre-owned games and hardware. And thank God for CEX. Although, you know, there's another element to it as well, is between the pair of Game and CEX, independent video game stores are basically being priced out of the market or elbowed out of the market. You know, it used to be that every town would have a couple of independent video game retailers, and now there's hardly any. Like, in my town in Nottingham, there isn't any. I think that the last one closed a few years back, and now it's just CEX and Game. What was that other company that was around for a little bit? I don't know if it's still even around. It was like orange themed. I can't remember the name of it now. But yeah, CEX may benefit hugely from this. Well, it's got to, because yeah, if you're someone who's not minted and you need to buy your games cheaper, you've basically got one option on the high street now, which is not good really, because that means CEX potentially will be able to dictate second-hand market prices if they've got nobody else to compete with. So that's not going to be good for consumers either, if CEX decides, well, we're the only ones in the second-hand market, we can put the prices up now. But the thing that kind of surprises me about it as well, the other thing, is I can't imagine that that Game, this is going to be good for their profits, because you'd have thought that they'd have a higher markup on pre-owned games than they do on new games. Like, has anybody got like real statistics on this? But I had a little quick look around, and it seems that it's the price that they pay publishers for new games, you know, the markup that they put on new games is about 10%, somewhere between 10 and 15%. So that's how much they're making on each game, 10 to 15%. So they pay a publisher 50 quid for a new game, they sell it in the store for 55 or 60 quid, right? There's not a huge percentage, not a huge markup. Whereas on the second hand, they don't give you much. They do not give you much for your second hand games, and it's got less over the years. They used to give you a bit more, a higher percentage. But yeah, you don't get a lot for trading. In fact, that's another thing. You don't get cash for a long time now. You haven't be able to get cash off of game for your trade-ins. It's only store credit. So again, that's surely a good business model for them, because not only are they giving you quite a low percentage for your games and then selling it on for what I imagine, I don't know, I haven't seen the statistics on this, but I imagine they're selling second-hand games at a higher percentage markup than they are first-hand games that they buy straight from the publishers, right? So not only that, but they're also only giving you store credit for your second-hand games. So you're going to come back to them and spend that store credit in their store as well. So like, surely that was a good business model. So it's kind of weird. I haven't really seen any comment from the company on why they're doing this, just that they are doing it. But you know, I know like most people buy their games digitally these days. That's a whole different problem. That's a whole different conversation. And again, I don't think that's good for consumers either. This move towards digital only, where you don't really own your games, you know. You can't lend them to friends, which also potentially affects sales, because how many times have you borrowed a game off a friend for a bit and liked it and then gone and bought it yourself, you know? But yeah man, game ending the second-hand market in their stores. Sign of the times. Bad news.